the other one that took so much time and it turned out very well ultimately was that Lindsey Scott.
I was going to ask you, tell us about that case.
That's, to me, is so fascinating. I just talked to him last week.
Oh, okay.
His mother appeared at my back door, and one of his sisters, it might have been Bonnie, on the Saturday before the third Sunday of Advent in some year. Don't ask me why I remember all that. I don't know. But I know it was that day. Mm-hmm. And they had all these clippings from the Washington Post and some local Virginia newspapers about this trial. And his mother was convinced that he was innocent and that he did not get a fair trial. And she was going, I guess, church to church, looking for $20 to hire a new attorney.
Mm-hmm. And he was a military. He was a
Marine.
Yeah,
military. He was a Marine corporal. Mm-hmm. That was his dream. Marine corporal, cop.
Mm-hmm. And what was he accused of again? Just
attempted murder and rape. Mm-hmm. And he got, I think it was 35, it might have been 30, but 30 or 35 years in Leavenworth. Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, you know, that's going to take a lot of money and whatever. I said, how do you know? I mean, you've got a new attorney and you want to pay him. How do you know he's any good? I said, where'd you find the first one? Well, he was in the Yellow Pages. So I knew Frank Headhead. Mm-hmm. My family was close to Frank, still close to the Headheads, I think. And so I called Frank Headhead after I said, I'm going to check on this attorney. I said, why would we want to spend money on a guy that may not be any good? Mm-hmm. So I called and I said, what do you know about Howard and a guy named John Lano? And he said, well, I'll find out. And he called back and he said, they're reputable. They're known to be tenacious, and they've been there for 60 years. I said, fine, okay. And I called her back and I said, yeah, I'll help you raise some money for this because these guys sound like they know what they're doing. And she had given me the name of a woman named Laurie Jackson, who had become kind of an advocate for Lindsey, was convinced that he was innocent. And at that point, for me, it didn't matter whether he was innocent or not. Reading the clippings, it was clear he did not get a fair trial. Whether he was innocent or not wasn't the point for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because even if you're guilty, you get a fair trial. So I called Laurie Jackson, and we talked for a while. She had been in Tennessee on an Army base with her husband for years, and she was an African-American woman who needed to advocate, felt, you know, people were getting a bad deal, and she was convinced. She had looked into all this. She said, I can put Lindsey Scott away from this. There's an alibi, and he was never asked about it on the stand. The lawyer didn't prepare the witnesses properly, but I know where he was. I know the story he was in, stuff like that. So she said, and I'm going to tell you, she said, I got 5 daughters. If I thought he did this, I'd hang the son of a bitch myself. Mm. Well, that convinced me that maybe he's even innocent. Not only is he not guilty and didn't get a fair trial, he might be innocent. So I called Lano and them, and I said, you know, you don't know me, I don't know you. I understand attorney-client privilege. I want to raise some money, you know, try to help you all out, you know, so can we work together and that kind of thing? We did. And then the hard part came to raise the money. John ended up not getting very much of it. Most of the money that we raised ended up going to private detective work, and that guy was really good. He dug up stuff that was very helpful to this case. And it went on. We raised money for a while. Very helpful was Reverend, Elmore. Mm-hmm. He was extremely helpful, and also Jim, what's the guy that, the bald head?
African-American?
African-American, has a cane, has a silver dollar ring or some $20 gold piece ring or something like that. James had the church down here where
With the eagle in it?
Yeah, the church across from Spalding that's now
Yes.
something
Oh,
else.
Yes. Why can't I think of his last name either?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know who you're talking
But
about.
anyway, those two guys.
Used to wear the cowboy hats.
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
boots and
him.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were very helpful, very helpful in opening the church up, raising money, and that kind of thing. We finally raised roughly $20,000, but it was in 10s and 20s and 25s. I mean, this came in very slowly. And John and them they're going to do the job whether we had the money or not. I mean, they believed in this client. And finally they won the appeal to get a new trial. And they got a new trial. And it was filled with, and before that, by that time, a priest here in town named Tom Clark had sent a letter to Ed Bradley, just Ed Bradley, 60 Minutes, New York. And he had said something about this case, and I came home one day, and there's a phone call, a message on a tape, which, you know, those are the old days, and it was from, hello, I'm Morley Safer's secretary. Mr. Safer would like to do a story, possibly. Could we be in touch, and blah, blah, blah. And so, hell, you know, get 60 Minutes involved, I'm good with that. And Joe Wershba, the producer, who actually was part of the Edward R. Murrow story, which turned out, it was a very interesting thing, because this guy goes way back. He flew into town as a courtesy. He said, we're not going to film here, because none of it happened here, but he said, I wanted to meet you, I wanted to meet his parents and all this. And he ran through, he said, this guy's got to be innocent. He said, the woman and him are in apartments near each other. If he did this, why did she not just say, it's the guy in 2B? I mean, they were all military. They saw each other in the parking lot. We don't know for a fact. We finally concluded, we think that she got beat up and maybe possibly raped by her husband, that it was a case of abuse. And to throw people off, she said it was a black attacker.
Blame the black guy.
Well, yeah, just to say, get him away from anybody that even resembled her husband, you know. And the police, Lindsey had busted somebody, another member of the Corps, for some minor traffic thing or something like that, and then there was some conflict there. So they took an identikit and built, you know, something that didn't even look like Lindsey, but she agreed that it did. And so that's kind of how he got identified. Of course, the second trial worked out, fortunately, not guilty. And he came back, and eventually he's a successful practicing attorney here in town now. And so, but...
How did that change you, Father?
I still get choked up. I couldn't be there for the whole trial, but I went up and waited for that jury to come back. I just sat there and tried to figure out, what do we do if they say guilty? His mother's sitting there and everything. But the joy of that not guilty thing, that was incredible. And to think that you played even some small role in getting an innocent person who is deprived of his freedom and had just had a daughter 1 month before all this happened. He didn't get to see, because they didn't have the money to go out to Leavenworth and take a kid out. He really didn't get to see his daughter for the first 5 years of her life because of these charges.
And his mother, say her name.
Gosh, I don't know her name. Mrs. Scott, Lolita.
Lolita Scott.
No, that's his wife. Lolita's the wife. What was her name? Oh, she was fabulous. And I mean, she just...
But you know, when you talk about her, she sounds like Mamie Till, like my son.
Oh, yeah, she was an advocate.
Emmett Till's
this
mother.
woman,
yes.
The
this power of this
of,
woman to say,
oh, yeah.
I'm not going to let my son go like this.
She was going to do everything to make sure that he got exonerated. And it was amazing. And fortunately, she wasn't in that great a health. And fortunately, she made it. Laurie Jackson, who actually tracked down the alibi witness and made it happen, Laurie Jackson was in a hospital dying, and John and I, she was in a coma. John and I went over the night of the verdict,
and saw her and told her what had happened. We like to think she understood what we'd said. We don't know. But I hope she did, because she was one of the key players who believed in him enough to go and do all that. I mean, she got nothing out of this in terms of money, nothing. And did all this legwork and found the alibi witness and all that kind of stuff. Pretty powerful. The story is pretty powerful.
Well, that Lindsey Scott case, that's why I wanted to ask you about the impact on your life, because you know, a lot of things happen. I mean, Dr. King died, but you didn't know them. You didn't touch them. This is somebody you touched that you knew, and that you worked hard to save their life. Was there, I think about white supremacy, and I wanted to ask you about that. Because it can be controversial, right?
Well, there was some of that in this trial.
Exactly.
There were reports that an Aryan group were going to try to harm him. So we had a security detail for 200 miles following. When he left that courtroom at Quantico, it was 200 miles we were followed, or he was, I wasn't in that, I was on a plane, to make sure that he was not harmed, because it had taken on some of those overtones, because it was a white woman and Lindsey was black.
It's an old story, isn't it?
Yeah, so there was some of that, yeah.